I want you to start with the beginning. The beginning. I know you as a great bishop. I know you as a very powerful man, but that's not how you were born. That's not how life began for you.
No, it didn't. I grew up in a rough area too, so I was involved in gangs,
Yeah.
I think right up until I became a Christian, I lived a very reckless type of life.
So you were the oldest male.
I was the oldest male, and then that's why I felt a sense of responsibility to see to the family, seeing that my father was no more there.
And were you aware at that time why your father? Were you aware that he was away because he was alcoholic?
I was fully aware. Yeah.
You were fully aware.
I understood. Yeah. I started to have this sort of empty feeling inside of me, and I said, "What is life all about? Is this all there is to life?" Because now I lived from I smoking at the age of 12, 13.
Yeah, wow.
By the age I was 14, I started drinking now because I was working. I thought I was a big man.
Akosua Busia presents On the Road to Damascus. For this episode, our giant of the faith hails from South Africa. He is the senior pastor and founder of Inter-fellowship Global Ministries and Inter-fellowship Christian School located in Durban, South Africa. Established in 1984, Inter-fellowship is now ministering to several thousand people on a weekly basis. He has been in the ministry for 34 years now. He serves on the Church Growth International Board of Directors, founded by Dr David Yonggi Cho. He is a visionary who has a passion to see ordinary people become all that God has intended them to be. He has been married for 45 years, and he is the father of 4 children and 9 grandchildren.
And tell the whole world Jesus cares for their souls, and he died to let them know who will go.
Here we are for another episode of On the Road to Damascus. And I have someone here who I'm very excited. I actually went and pulled him out of somewhere to come. He doesn't know much about what he's about to do, but he's such a man of God. I'm sure this is going to be very, very simple for him, talking here today with us. He is a familiar face, along with Bishop Dag Hewitt-Mills. He's a familiar face, and I'm not going to say much more than that because I want him to speak for himself and for you not to be looking at me or thinking about me when we have such a great man of God in our midst. So, Bishop, I always have people say their own name. Yours isn't as tricky as usual, but I do that to dodge saying people's names, so please give us your full name.
Well, my full name is Bishop Robin Bernard Oliver.
There we go. That's one I can say. Welcome, very big welcome to On the Road to Damascus. So, Bishop Oliver, I guess you know what? Actually, you're from South Africa.
I'm from South Africa.
Were you born in South Africa?
I was born in South Africa.
Okay, so I want you to start with the beginning. The beginning. What even brought you? Because I know you as a great bishop. I know you as a very powerful man. But that's not how you were born, and not how. Well, you were born with that in your spirit, I'm sure. But I'm saying that's not how life began for you.
No, it didn't. Actually, I come from a family of 10, 5 brothers and 5 sisters. And unfortunately, my father had a problem with alcohol. And so I felt from a very young age a burden to help my mother and sister wherever I can. So maybe I should not have done it, but I did in any case. I left school after primary school, and I started work at about 14 years old.
Wow.
And so I was gainfully employed from 14 years old.
Wow.
And I'd give my mother about maybe 60% of my income to help her with the rest of the family, because it's a big family.
Yes, yes.
And my father was away for about 18 months, I think, in a rehabilitation center in a place called Kraaifontein in Cape Town.
So what were you doing gainfully employed at 14?
Well, initially, because I didn't have any particular skill, I was actually working at a fridge manufacturer and not getting very much at all. And then from there, I think they closed down, and I went to a shoe manufacturer. They were called Goodwear Shoes at that time. Then I remember going to another group that was actually, I think, part of Toyota. They were called Prospectin, I think, at that time, or something like that, or Motor Assemblies, I think is the accurate name. But because I was underage, the truant inspector came right to the job and took me back to school.
Wow.
So I devised a plan. I thought, no, I don't want to go to school anymore. I'm working now. So what I did, I took my father's ID number without his voter, and I said, this is my ID, because you had to have an ID number in order to be employed legally. And also you had to have your birth certificate. So you had to at least be 16 years old. Now I was 14. So what I did is that I took my father's ID number and I said, it's mine. And they asked me for and I said, well, I don't know where it is, but I just got this. And then also, because I knew that because of your age, and we had to go through some sort of medical test. So the nurse that was in charge, and she examined me, she said, man, are you sure that you're 16, turning 17? I said, I'm sure, but I was very worried. She says, you look so small. She says, but anyway, your birth certificate says you are. But I had actually taken JIC, and I blotted out the 2, and I put a naught in there. So I was very naughty to do that. I'm not proud of it. But I did it because I wanted to work, I knew I'd never be able to work legally if I didn't do that. And so that's one of the reasons.
So where did you fall in the children lineup?
Oh, I was the second eldest, but I was the eldest brother. There were 5 brothers. I was the eldest brother.
The elder boy.
And my sister was actually the eldest of the sisters and the eldest in the family. I was about 18, 19 months younger than her.
So you were the oldest male? I
was the oldest male, and then that's why I felt a sense of responsibility to see to the family, seeing that my father was not there.
And were you aware at that time why your father? Were you aware that he was away because he was alcoholic?
I was fully aware. Yeah.
You were fully aware.
I understood. Yeah.
Wow. And how was obviously your mother? Where were you living, by the way, at this time?
This is interesting. At 18, I got married, and my wife and I came and stayed with my mother. I think we had 2.5 rooms. Don't ask me how, but there were 10 children, my wife, and my newborn son. I don't know if he was I think he could have been there. My newborn son and my mother, so I don't know how many of us, I can't even remember how many of us.
That's about 12, 13 people.
12, 13 people in 2 rooms. How we survived, I really don't know. But we somehow managed to work through it. But it was very difficult. I grew up in a rough area too, so I was involved in gangs, I think right up until I became a Christian, I lived a very reckless type of life, even though I was helping my mother, but I was also living quite a reckless life.
So where were you in South Africa? Where were you actually?
We were in an area called Wentworth, or Oosterville, Wentworth.
Okay.
Yeah, to give some idea, it's like a sub-economic type of housing setup, and thousands of people in a very small square area, So you always have problems with things like that. So you get gangs coming up, gangs fighting gangs and that type of thing.
This is, I think, fascinating, and I feel important. I mean, that's why I even called this show On the Road to Damascus, because I think many times we look at great men of God and people just wish they were like that. And like the preacher was saying yesterday, they just want someone to touch their heads and receive all the anointing that, everything that you've gone through. Just give it to me and let me start up here and have a massive church and tell people how God loves them. And that's not how it is. That's not how the road is at all.
Yeah, I've come a long way.
Yeah. So, and if I may say so, like we're in Ghana at the moment. We will be transmitting from different countries, but we're in Ghana. So here in Ghana, people look at you and they think, oh,
Yes.
he's a white man, right? But I
Yeah.
look at you, and I'm not sure, you know, knowing South Africa, what section were you in? What were you considered? Because this is when that mattered more
Yeah.
than now.
In South Africa, I was classified as colored.
Colored, exactly.
Now this
yeah.
is very humorous because my wife, her father's German, but her mother was non-white, you know.
Okay.
And when she applied for her identity when we were going to get married, they insisted that she take a white identity, and she said, "No, I married a colored man," you know.
Wow.
Now on my identity it said colored,
Yes.
but on my birth certificate,
Yes.
it just said mixed. It just used the word mixed. So I was amused because my son, when his birth certificate came, it said, so they called her Cape Colored eventually. They conceded after she fought and said, "No, I'm not white. My mother's colored. I'm not
Yes.
pure white." You know, and then they gave her what they call Cape Colored,
Cape
which were
Colored.
considered a higher level
A higher
of
breed
colored.
of colored.
I came in, I think, second. I was just called colored.
Colored.
You know.
Yes.
And then my son, was amazing. He was called an other colored. Yeah. Where they got these words from, I really don't know, honestly.
And it's amazing though,
Yeah.
because I mean,
It
even though
used to
I
make us
love,
angry too. I got to be honest. We used to get very angry because they said, "Look, we're one family."
Yes.
But they tell us, "You colored, you Cape Colored, I'm
Other
I'm
colored.
I'm
With
colored.
the other colored
My
son."
son is other colored." So we all, you know. So it was very interesting. There was a real challenge when it came to racism
Yes.
in South Africa. I think you know that
Yes.
from before.
Yes.
Look, let's say from
Yeah.
up until apartheid ended.
Yes. And at that time, I mean,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but at that time, if your wife hadn't insisted
Yeah.
that she's whatever colored, Cape
Yes.
colored, and
They
that
would have
she's
given her white.
then if
They
she
would have
got
issued.
white, then she couldn't really
Then she
legally
wouldn't be able to marry
you.
me.
Yes.
It would be,
Yeah.
that's how crazy it
Yes,
was. Yeah.
yes, because if she was white, then she
Yeah.
couldn't marry you being colored.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
why
you
she
wouldn't have had an
insisted.
other.
That's why she insisted and
just-
said, "No, I'm not white. My father's white, but my mother's colored. So I'm colored. I'm not pure white, you know."
It's just,
Yeah.
you know, I'll veer off that because we could
Yeah.
stay in that forever, but it's just mind-blowing and mystifying,
Yeah.
that tool of the enemy that has
Yeah.
been so simply used and is still being used. And
I think it
continues.
definitely has had an
It's-
effect on
it's-
us.
I mean, it's interesting because, you know, nobody goes away 18 months for treatment unless they've been manifesting that for a long time.
Yeah.
People don't become alcoholic overnight. So really that means that you were really raised with a man that drinks.
Yes.
You know.
And so I did
you
too
know,
also.
You know, and then you have the gangs, and yet you have a heart that says, I must now step up at 14 and be the man of the house. So what was your influence from gangs or your living where you did? What was that for you amidst all of that?
Yeah, I think it started at about just over 14 when I started working. I don't know how it happened, but there was a group of us, we were just friends, and we were now all working. We were maybe 16 now, about that time we were about 16 years old. And we used to get together and, you know, we liked clothes, so we would buy clothes and dress nicely and so forth. We liked holding dances. We even had a club of our own, you know. We had a club that we had. And then once or twice, gangs from outside came, and we never really classified ourselves as a gang.
Yes.
We just said we're a club, you know. But somehow, you know, they come and they cause a fight, and then there's a reaction. And I think they stabbed one of my friends, then I was trying to stab one of their friends, and you know, it's a vicious cycle, you know.
Yes.
I think that's one of the things that I think if something could have really degenerated into real problems for me, it was that.
Yeah.
But somehow, I don't know, when I think about it now, I was about 21. I was already married for 3 years, and my marriage was also going down because of the way I was living. I was not a Christian at that time. I wasn't born again. I wasn't going to church. I knew nothing about church, really. And then I must say I started to have this sort of empty feeling inside of me. And I said, what is life all about? You know, is this all there is to life? Because now I lived from I smoking at the age of 12, 13.
Yeah, wow.
By the age I was 14, I started drinking now because I was working. I thought I was a big man now. Started going around and, you know, all these type of things. And I realized one day, I said to myself, I never forget, I asked this question. I said, but there must be another way to live, you know, because if I live this way, I'm not going to live too long. I know that with the fighting, the enemies, even perceived enemies. You know, so you perceive everyone as the enemy. It's amazing how it affects you mentally also. And then at the age of 21, I really began to have a desire to change, but I didn't know how. Now, my late grandmother was a born-again Christian, but she never really spoke to me, you know, about becoming a Christian. But I knew that she was, I could see it in her life. And I always say I feared her more than I feared my mother and my father.
Wow.
Because there's something about her that commanded respect, you know. She didn't smoke, she didn't drink, you know. I don't remember ever using vulgar language or anything like that. So she was very strict. She had a sort of, I don't know, like a sort of English sort of way about her, you know, the way she carried herself. That's when I really saw there must be another way to live. And in the end, long story short, I really became desperate, and I said, no, I've got to find a way out of this. I can see where this is going, you know, if I don't correct it. But I didn't know how. That's the frustration, is that you want to change, but you don't know how. Then I was working on a job, not long in that same time. I worked on a job in an area called Ballito Bay. It was strictly a white area. You were only working there because you were a builder. I was a bricklayer by trade. I eventually became a bricklayer by trade, so I was an artisan or a craftsman. And so I was working in this area. We were building duplex flats in the white area in Ballito Bay. It's just outside Mclaughlin Rocks. A lot of people in Durban would know Mclaughlin, but Ballito Bay. It was about 45 minutes by road. We used to travel in the back of a truck and take us there and work and then come back. And it was in that time that I saw one of my friends there. And there was something different about him, you know. I knew him very well. And I said, Clive, his name was Clive. I said, Clive, what's happened to you, you know? I said, I can see that you're different. And he laughed, you know. It's like as if he was a bit shy to tell me what happened to him. And I pushed him. I said, look, I said, are you saved? I heard about this being saved, or I've heard people talk about it. He says, yes, I'm saved. And he laughed, you know. I said, tell me about this being saved, you know.
Wow.
Is it real? Does it work? He says, yes, you know, it works. So I said, tell me more. So he laughed again. He said, okay, I tell you what, I've got some tracks here. And he had animated tracks in his bag that he took out and he gave to me. And he said, look, Robin, when you get a chance, read these animated tracks. So I remember it was a Monday coming back from work. That whole weekend we had been drinking, and so I also had a hangover. And I remember these tracks were in my bag. At the back of this truck, I think, well, it's 45 minutes back home. I might as well read these tracks. I've got nothing else to do. It's about 30, 40 of us in this truck, you know. And I opened this track, and it's animated, so it's got drawings there. I think the one was about Holy Joe. It was titled Holy Joe. But the short of it was that it clearly showed you that God loves you in spite of your condition, you know, and in spite of your problems. And it had to be the Holy Spirit, because I could not have known this on my own. But somehow when I read that animated track, something came out of there. I saw something real there. Something was real about it. And I realized for the first time that Jesus was God and that he was real and he was alive. And he paid the price for my sins, and I did not have to live that way anymore. Wow. And so I accepted him. And I knew from that Monday, that's almost 49 years ago, I was completely changed, although I didn't understand the Bible fully because I hadn't read the Bible before. But I knew I was changed. At that same evening, just to cement what I felt had happened to me, I said to my friend, I said, must I come to church with you? He said, oh, there's a tent. There's a tent meeting that we're going to tonight. I said, I'll meet you at your home. I knew where you stayed. I said, I'll go with you and your wife, and I'll go to the tent crusade that night. But I was very scared, I'll be honest. I was frightened because I didn't understand religion properly and salvation properly. And you also heard negative things about it. So I'm sitting there and they make this appeal for you to come up, and I said, oh, I'd want to show everyone that I've made but I'm so scared because I don't know what would happen up there, would some trick happen, or would they do something to me, and I'll not be in my right mind. It's amazing the things that went through your mind. But my friend was very calm, and he just nudged me like that. He said, do you want to go up? And I said, I don't know. He said, if you go up, I'll go with you. So then I got a bit of courage and I went up and I stood in the front there and I made a public commitment to serve the Lord. Like I said, it was 49 years ago. I've never looked back. I've had problems, but I've never looked back.
You know, just listening to you, it's so moving and so humbling, because sometimes when you have people in need or you have something, you feel like there's this complexity that you must, how this person's clever or intellectual. I must explain. How will I explain? Do I know to say the sinner's prayer with them properly or whatever? And here you are, because, one of my favorite, it's not even the whole scripture, just seek and you shall find. I believe that with all my heart. Seek and you shall find. And here you are with a heart that doesn't know what, but you're seeking. And to even recognize in your friend a change, and then to hear that here you are in a truck, probably with laborers or whatever, and you're looking at a cartoon, and it can minister to. And sometimes I look at I'll say the arrogance of myself, of man, where you even think that, oh, I must know this before I minister some. And it's just, and a simple thing like your friend saying, I'll get up with you. I think sometimes we look at the more complex, or how shall I this, or I'll pick them up on church. People are hungry and needing. And if we would get out the way, the Holy Spirit, our risen Lord, is right there. You were seeking, without knowing you're seeking, you're hungry. And in all of that, even when you say you're married at such a young age, 18, and you're still with your same wife, and so I think about
53 years married in February next year, unbroken service. But it's only the grace of God that kept us together. And we've never parted,
that unbroken
But I must say there were times where I didn't think that we would make it, but I would cry out to God, because another thing that's interesting, a lot of people said to me, because I was married in court, because we were not Christians at that time, and I won't say which denomination, but I went to a certain minister in the area that was well-known, and a well-known denomination, and I was shocked by what he told me. He said to me, are you a member of this church? Do you come to this church? I said, no, not really, but my father was, And he said, why don't you go and get married in court? Because when you get divorced, it will be easy. It will be easy for you, My gosh. And I could not believe what I was hearing, but I didn't want to be rude or anything. I said, no, thank you, so-and-so. And when I went away, I said to my wife, who was then my girlfriend then, I said, well, look, if the church won't marry us, let's go and get married in court, And that's how I ended up getting married in court. Then I heard, because I was married in court, my marriage would never last. It's not blessed, it's cursed. It was not done by a minister and so forth. And somehow God said to me, look, even if it was done, whoever it was done by, you meant it in your heart. You were sincere about it. Your wife was sincere about it. And so, as far as I'm concerned, that's how it came to me. God said, look, I will bless the marriage,
Yeah.
not because of the church but because you and your wife have made a commitment
Yes.
to follow me. I must say, at that time, we hadn't made a commitment. We didn't understand it fully.
Yeah.
But when we got saved, then we began to understand, when we gave our hearts to the Lord. That was not, we were about almost turning 22, just 21 turning 22, when the both of us, I think I made the first commitment, and 2 days later she came and gave her heart to the Lord. And from that day, as I said, we never looked back. And we worked through our difficulties. We now and again maybe needed a little bit of counseling from one or two senior people. But I must say, for a couple that didn't get married in church, got married in court, and we knew nothing much at all. We basically almost like stumbled our way through.
Yes.
But then when we became Christians, I started to look at the Bible and say, what does the Bible say about it, you know? What does the Bible say? How does a woman relate to a wife? How does the wife relate to the husband? How does the husband? And we really tried our best to model our marriage after what we understood from the Bible. I don't know if we understood everything.
Yeah.
I think we understood some things,
Yes.
you know. Yeah.
And it's interesting because that is a church or a preacher or whatever that probably looked at background, you know, economic,
Yes,
and just thought there's not much hope. So,
Yeah.
you know.
I think he knew who we were.
You know, yeah.
I think he knew who we were.
Yes.
And he didn't have much confidence that the
no,
marriage
no
would last.
confidence in anything, but God had confidence.
God had confidence.
God had confidence. How was, so your mother in all of this,
Yes.
and your family, were they affected by the difference? Did they notice the difference? Where were they with it?
They were. Well, look, we got married at 18. They were supportive of me getting married. Unfortunately, my wife's parents, her father passed on just before, about 2 weeks before we got married, and it created a problem because now we didn't have his signature because we were 18. And at that time, if you were 18, you were considered underage.
Yes, you had to be 21.
You had to be 21
Yeah.
to be considered an adult, to make your own decision. You didn't need your consent.
Yes.
But in our case, both of us needed consent from our parents. But as I say, my parents didn't seem to have a problem with it. But now both her parents were not around anymore.
Wow.
So it ended up with the Commissioner of Child's Welfare. And so I remember him talking to me, and I was so nervous because he asked me, do I understand anything about marriage? And I'm trying to act as confident as I can. At 18 years old, I knew nothing, you know. And I said, yes, I am, you know. He says, are you sure? He says, do you know what a responsibility it is to get married? You think you're able to look after a wife and children? And I said, yes, I think I do, sir, you know. And long story short, she was also interviewed by him, and he gave the permission.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's how we got married. At 18, we were married.
18.
Yeah.
And you must have had children quite early, because you said you
Yes.
entered with a...
I think my eldest son, who's here, Pastor Craig, he was born 5 months after we were married. So my wife was pregnant already when we got married, which I know was not the Christian thing, but that's where we were at that stage in our life.
Yes.
And we were not, as I said, we were not Christians at that time.
Yeah.
It was only at 22 where we
That
both
you
became
became.
Christians. So I think my son was about 4 years old, 3 or 4 years old, when we made that commitment. Yeah, we were married for about 3 years.
Yeah.
I think 18, 19, 20, 3 years, 4 years. And then we got saved, you know.
And went on, you had, because you have 10 children, did you say?
No.
Or how many children do you have? Your mother had 10
children.
Yes. How
But
many
we
do
had
you have?
4.
Oh, you have 4.
And
Okay.
I have 11 grandchildren already.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Abundance.
And both my wife and I turned 71 in July.
Gosh.
She was on the 5th and I'm on the 24th. Yeah.
Gosh.
So we both-
Congratulations. I
yeah.
would never have guessed
Yeah.
that. Never have guessed that. So I want to, your father, I'm just curious,
Yes.
how he went, he was in rehab, you know, when you
Yes.
started working. He came back to the family?
He came back to the family, but I must say by that time, well, like I said, I was round about maybe 16 now when he came back. And I could see that he's definitely not been fully rehabilitated. And then when I spoke to him, I realized why. Because he said to me, he said, well, you know, you all sent me there, you know, that's how he put it. I didn't send him there. He says, you all sent me there to get rehabilitated. But he says, everything that I could get here, I got it there, you know. So he came back unchanged. He just, it's like he left off 18 months and he picked up after 18 months and carried on doing what he was doing, you know. But I must say, God has helped me that I've never really, I don't hold a grudge against him. You know, I think it's his life. He decided to live that way. I was fortunate in this way that just before he died, the lady that was in charge of that ward where he was critically ill, she phoned me at about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. She was more my eldest sister's close friend, but she knew me because we were the same standard at school, you know. And she said, look, Robin, your father may not make it through the night, so I don't know if you want to come here. I said, but Louise, I don't think that we can even come there. Are we allowed to come at 11 o'clock? Because they had very strict rules and that. And she said, no, if you come, as long as it's not too much noise, I can put the lamp over his bed, I can put the lamp on, and you can try and speak to him. But she said he's lost his speech, but he can hear everything you're saying, and he responds by nodding or, you know, or moving his head that way. And so I went, and by the grace of God, I led him to the Lord. You know. Yes, I led him to the Lord.
Wow.
Yeah. And I trust I'll see him in heaven one day.
Yes.
After all his tantrums.
After all this,
Maybe it's like the thief on the cross, you know. Jesus said, today you'll be with me in paradise.
How old was he then? Do you remember?
He was 57. He didn't live very young. Yeah, much younger than me. He was 57 when that happened, yeah.
Wow, that's a fantastic testimony. Yeah. And your mother?
My mother lived much longer. Well, my mother, I must say, she didn't really, if she did take alcohol, I think it was very rare, because I can't ever remember seeing my mother under the influence of alcohol, and also I never saw her smoke a cigarette.
Right.
You know. So I think she brought some measure of stability to the family because of that. And I think she was about 69, about 70 when she passed on.
So she lived to see you become a preacher?
Oh, yes, yes. She even fought me too, because she says, I'm trying to change her, and I'm trying to make sure she does know about God. And, you know, the old people had their own way of looking at things, you know, and they would get angry when you come and try and tell them they must change now to your way, you know. Just, you were playing the fools the other day, and you expect me now to change just because all of a sudden said, I am changed in my own way.
Yes.
But she was very supportive of what happened in our lives, because she knew where we came from. And she was even supportive of the church when I started the church. She was very supportive. I never forget, she's not get much, but every month she'd tell me, there's my tithes, there's my building offering.
So how did you go from a young man that was working, a young man that found the Lord, a young man that's already married with great responsibilities, taking responsibility for your brothers and sisters, knowing the Lord, but now what's the bridge between, or what's the road between that, your salvation, and then going into the church yourself? Yeah,
I must say I had a very dramatic experience with salvation, because from the day, that Monday that I spoke about, that I had that encounter with God, and I went to the tent that night and I made a public commitment, I found that nobody need to really say too much to me. This is how it got started. One of the young men that were already saved, he said to me, I'm picking you up Saturday. I never heard of this in my life. He said, I'm picking you up Saturday morning, and we're going to preach in the bus. I said, but I can't preach. He said, you give your testimony of what the Lord's done in your life. And so that was the first time I ever spoke. Wow. And I was shaking. I was so scared, but I blurted out the words. I must have spoke for about 3 to 5 minutes, not more than that. And I didn't know what else to say, so I sat down, you know, and I was still shaking. And I went and I told my wife. She said, "Why did you do that? Why do you stand up in the bus? Now everybody's going to know that you made a fool of yourself." I said, "No, I believe I did the right thing, but I can't understand, you know." And from that time, I kept speaking in the buses because I wasn't qualified to speak in the churches yet.
Yes.
So I started speaking in the buses. I spoke in open airs. We had open air services. And I was affiliated to a church. I was with the AOG at that time, Apostle Colin Lafoy. He was my spiritual father. And so I was trained under him. I did complete an intermediate diploma in theology with, I think it's the Theological College of Southern Africa. And I did complete that diploma. And then he ordained us. I was ordained by the Assemblies of God in Wentworth under his authority. And I think it was the Secretary General of the AOG at that time. His name was John Stegman. I think he's late now, but he ordained us, you know. And that was in 1982. And so from that time, I always felt I was authorized to speak now, you know. So I think we were with the AOG for 10 years. And then I said to Apostle Colin Lafoy that I really felt God was leading me to start on my own, you know. And I tried to leave as peacefully as I could, you know. But leaving is never easy,
It's never
you know.
easy,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But that's I mean, even when you said, you know, you got your papers and you felt authorized.
Yes,
This
yes.
is a boy that left school at 14.
Yes.
So how was that even you know, that's
You know, I honestly feel, and I know that, you know, this is debatable by some people, but I honestly feel from the day that I gave my life to Christ, I think my IQ definitely increased substantially. Because prior to that, I struggled a bit with reading and that. I was quite good at spelling, but I was never good at English comprehension and things like that. But I found myself reading the Bible. They encourage us to start reading from the Gospel according to St. John chapter 1, you know. So I started reading from there. And I found I could read and I was understanding what I was reading. And sometimes I'd read for 4 hours like that, you know. That my wife said, you know, but, you know, don't think you're overdoing it now, you know. But I was so zealous and I was so hungry to learn. And I really became a serious reader after that. I read as much as I could get my hands on. But I read the Bible mainly more than any other book. Yeah.
I believe, I mean, I believe God can put in your spirit to be able to read. Absolutely. You know, I do believe that. So it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. So when did you, because here we are at Anakaza campus, when did you encounter, either by literature or this, the evangelist, Hewitt Mills? Because that's where I know you from.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting story, because in 1995, I traveled to Korea. It was my second time. I'd been in 1993, but my wife and I traveled to Seoul, Korea in 1995 also. And we stayed at this hotel. It wasn't a very good hotel at all, but I won't mention names. And I remember one of the board members, when I told him where I was staying, he says, "Oh, that's a dump." So, you know, but I won't say where. But at that same hotel, as I came down for breakfast, my wife and I, we see this young couple sitting alone together. And they also had the CGI badge, because it was Church Growth International Conference. So I realized, oh, they're at the same conference as we are. And they looked like they were from Africa. So I thought, well, let me speak to them and find out more about them, you know. And then that's how we got speaking. We sat down next to them and we started speaking. That was the first time we ever met. And I remember I was a bit intimidated, because I said, "By the way, what do you do, like, you know, besides ministry?" He says, "Well, I was a medical doctor, you know." and I said, "Your wife?" And she said, "Oh, she's an attorney." I thought, oh my. I must say, immediately I was intimidated. I said, "No, we're in two different classes here. You know. These are highly educated people, and my wife and I were very simple, down-to-earth people. I don't know how this is going to work, but God's got a sense of humor. In 1997, I met him again, you know, and I still didn't really fully connect, you know, because I was trying to figure out, will this work, you know, how's it going to work, you know. And also he was far from where we were, you know. And so then in 1999, I was determined to bring some of the board members, or even one of them, to preach at our church. And I was trying to get to a gentleman a pastor by the name of Pastor Casey Treat. He's in Seattle, Washington. I don't know if you know him, but he was well known at Rhema. So I thought, oh, if I can just get this guy, I didn't know he's on the board. But I just couldn't get to him. And I was so frustrated because every time I try and get someone's there talking to him, you know. And he didn't know me too. That's another thing. So when I turned around, I don't know, maybe, could be God, could be accident, I don't know. But I turned around and I saw Bishop Dag on this side, and I saw Dr. Theo Volmerans on this side. Now I knew Dr. Theo Volmerans well, and I had now known who Bishop Dag is, although I hadn't invited him. And I felt within me something say to me, look, leave this gentleman because he doesn't even know you. Go to Pastor Theo Volmerans and ask him if he'll come. And somehow inside him he said, and he'll come, you know. And he said, then go to Bishop Dag and ask him to come, and he'll also come. And so I went to Pastor Theo and he said, okay, Robin, I'll come. He said, but I may be able to come only one night. Now we had a week of meetings.
Right.
So I thought, I wonder if Bishop Dag can want to come for the whole week, you know. So I went to him and I told him, and he said, okay, just let me look at my diary and let me see, you know, and so forth. But within a short space of time, he agreed to come. And that was the first time. From there, we became very close. Yeah, we became very close. The doctor and I don't know what you want to call it. The doctor and the bricklayer.
And the bricklayer. Well, I mean, I know this is not your first time at Give Thyself Wholly because you've preached here. So when you say you've become very close friends, it's close
goes
friends.
Back a long time.
Yes, goes back a long time. I've been seeing you here. I've heard you preach, which is wonderful. And so, as I said, I'm very grateful to you for giving the story because, you know, for someone like me, I sit there and I just look up at you and think, wow, he's a great preacher. I look at your CV, great church. I'll read it after. Great man of God. You know, it's all great. It's as if, you know, that's why I had no idea of your story. And it's a blessing to hear because as a congregation or people, we look at you, great men, and it's as if you're and the thing is you're humorous with, I know that humor, which is a blessing from God too, but there's so, I mean, I know just what you've given me is a fragment. I could sit here all day and there's so much in it, but the end result is that you sought and you found and, you know, and God overcomes, you know. So.
And I really believe it seemed like from that time when Bishop Dag came and Pastor Theo, that the church really started to take off, you know, and I think we had about 300 or 400 members prior to that. But after they started coming, or rather more, Bishop Dag came many more times, we really saw the church grow, and we were able to plant, I think, about 5 or 6 churches through Bishop Dag's guidance and so forth. So, yeah, I must say that I really feel that somehow God brought Bishop Dag and I together. I always say to him, I think I needed you more than you needed me, you know.
But that's a wonderful thing and a sort of hallmark that I hear a lot, that from other men of God, that their churches grew.
Yes.
When in association with, or the books, or the teachings, the learnings, or the anointing. You know, I believe people are are anointed with various
You know,
gifts.
just coming back to, I think you asked me, how did I go from that to doing my intermediate diploma with the college?
Yes.
That was quite interesting because I only had a primary school education. The principal at that time of the college phoned me personally and he said to me, do I realize that the level of difficulty and comprehension of the diploma that I was attempting to do was equivalent, I'll never forget his words, he said it was equivalent to first year university material. And he says, look, I'm not saying this, he was very kind. And he said, look, you've only been up to standard 6 at that time, it would be grade 8 today. He said, you've only been up to grade 8. And I'm just concerned whether maybe you should rather start with a bridging course or something. And somehow I said to him, not in an arrogant way, I said, look, Mr. Almendra, I think that was his name. I said, look, you know, I realize that I may not have the qualification to do that diploma, but I believe I can do it, you know. But long story short, by the grace of God, as I said, I believe God increased my IQ. I completed over 36 assignments with an average of 79%. I almost had 80%.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Wow.
it could be classified as almost a distinction. So that's why I say for a fact that God increased my IQ.
Your IQ.
Or either it was there and I wasn't using it. One of the two.
Or it hadn't been tapped, or it hadn't
yeah.
been. Yes. That is. So your church now, when you say you've grown with Bishop Dag, your church, what is your church now? What is your congregation? How is it?
Yeah, well, we've built a 4,000 seating capacity auditorium, but I must hasten to say that I think we would have grown much more. You know, we're not even filling that place as yet because of the pandemic that took place. And in South Africa, they were very, I don't know how it was here, but they were very strict. They refused for us to meet in the church anymore. I could only come in and, you know, just do it on camera and then live stream it to the people, you know. And when we came back now and you're allowed to come back fully, it's almost like you had to start from scratch again and go and look for these members that now no more wanted to come to church. And many of them even stopped giving to the church. It was a very difficult time. So we've been in a process of recovery, I would say. Even up until this point, we're now about 60% recovered from where we were. So we've still got another 40% to go. But I think if it were not for the pandemic, we don't want to blame that. I hate making excuses. But I think if it were not for the pandemic, I think we would have grown to well over maybe 3,000 to 4,000 members, you know. And I think our attendance would have been at least over 1,000. Well over 1,000.
So I want to ask you this: do you have a favorite book of Bishop Dag that you have used or written or listened to or?
Well, there's two, but I think the one that I found that I gravitated towards, and I think most pastors would also, because of you know, you want your congregation to be together, you want everybody to be able to work together, and I think it would be loyalty and disloyalty. I think that's one of the ones that really struck me, really touched something within me. But I also felt that we had to grow into it, you know, because it's amazing your cultural dynamics to also come into the church, you know, whether we like it or not. People can be saved, but then they're still, maybe I'm just saying they could be white. They're saved, but they're still white, you know. They're saved, but they're still black. They're saved, but they're still Asian. They're saved, but they're still colored, you know. So we've had those challenges to try and unite a congregation, a mixed congregation, is very, very difficult. I think maybe the most difficult thing that man could ever do is for all human beings to unite together and become one.
Oh.
That would be a greater miracle than going to the moon or the Mars or wherever,
And I have to say, South Africa is like a microcosm of that.
Definitely.
More than most countries, that
and
you
so
have that. So
there's a lot of mistrust.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ill feeling that's still there,
Yes.
So we got a lot to work through, really. But thank God, look through. Nelson Mandela's played a huge role, and he set the example for everyone. So I made up my mind that I'm going to just do my best to be a person that unites people instead of divides them. So I'm not anti anything.
Yes, And interestingly enough, from those days where you felt, okay, I'm with my wife and we're builders, laborers, whatever we are, and Bishop is a doctor or a lawyer or whatever they are.
I was intimidated by that, really.
But what would you say today about that?
No, I found him to be a very down-to-earth person. I felt, actually we became good friends. I found I could relate to him. And I felt I was not so stupid as I thought I was. I felt that I could relate to a lot of the things that he was saying, logical things. And a lot of things are common sense. I think we don't realize that anyone can relate to them. But sometimes when you have a complex, you have an inferior complex, it hinders you from really being all that you can be, But that's where Bishop Dag has also helped me a lot, because he's made me realize that, look, you are not less than anyone else, You can be everything that God created you to be, but you don't have to be arrogant or proud. You can be, down to earth and yet still be whoever you choose to be, And so, I must say, I was saying to someone else just before I came here, I don't know any other person like Bishop Dag. So he has a unique place in my life, I don't know any person like him, that is just unique the way he is, and what he's been able to accomplish. I mean, I'm in awe of that. I think that's why I still come, because I'm trying to figure out how did he manage to do all this, and he looks so calm, and he looks so relaxed, and how did he do all this, and why would all these people listen to him in the first place, So, I'm still in awe of Bishop Dag, really. We're really in awe of God more than anything else. We know it's God, but it's amazing what God's done in his life. Since I met him almost 29 years ago in 95 in Korea, it's not the same Bishop Dag that I know now. When I say not the same, I'm not saying in terms of his attitude.
No, I understand.
But in terms of where God has taken him, it's almost like we were like this. I think I was here and he was there, and then all of a sudden I went here, but he went there. I hope that explains it, but that's how I feel what happened. So now it's like I'm trying to say, well, how do I get to where you are, Yeah.
Well, whatever it is, I'm glad it brings you back year and year, because we really enjoy seeing you. I enjoy hearing when you preach. And I
enjoy being here.
And I thank you, because I know the time here is crushed. So I really thank you for coming to speak to us.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So be encouraged on the road to Damascus. Be encouraged. You have encouraged me. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Who will go and tell the whole world Jesus cares for their souls, and he died to let them know? Who will go?
What are those other words? This, that, share, that. I don't know those words.
So we just have to let us, we need you to have a place of peace in your life.
Yes.
And be logged in right here on this channel.
Yes.
So why don't you like the video?
There you go.
Subscribe to it.
There you
and
go.
hit that notification bell, like a cowbell, so that you always get updates when we go live or we have something new for you. It's going to be fun. It's going to be inspirational. And it's going to be educative whilst you are here.
everything, all of those. So that is it. Welcome to Prince of Peace.
Like, we like you. Comment, we hear you. Share, we share with you. Join us. Subscribe to your Prince of Peace family and hit that notification button so you always know what's up.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bless